Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard. I'm Lauren Feldman, as usual. I'm here with Gene Marks, who has his finger on the small business pulse more than anyone I know. We're going to talk about the stories and issues we think business owners should be following this week. Great to have you here, Gene.
I am so happy to be here, Lauren Feldman, as usual. I'm glad that... Who else is going to be there?
We missed a couple of weeks. It's good to have you back. I always miss it when we can't do it. So let's dive right into it. Let's start with a recent column you wrote about a gusher of money that is headed for small businesses in the form of the State Small Business Credit Initiative, or SSBCI. My guess is that a lot of people are not really familiar with this program. Tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up, because I've been trying to get the word out about it. I mean, we've had the Paycheck Protection Program, we had the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, other stimulus aid for COVID. That, like COVID, is in the rearview mirror. At least I hope it is in the rearview mirror. But it ain't over, and a lot of people aren't aware that the government has just started doling out $10 billion in help for small business. Was part of a prior stimulus bill,
from a year ago, right?
Yeah, it was the American Rescue Family Plan Act that builds everything back better and is good for
not build back better. That didn't pass.
It's one of those things. But anyway, it authorized $10 billion, and I just want to make sure that if you're running a small business, you should know about this. This is not like a minority business thing, although minority businesses and businesses in low to moderate income areas will get some money, some priority, but really it's for anybody running a business. Paul Downs can apply for this, and Jay Goltz and all the people in your community can apply for these SSBCI funds, the State Small Business Credit Initiative, and it works like this. The $10 billion has been whacked up among all 50 states and territories and tribal communities. You don't even want to know the formula. It's not that important, and I can't even understand it, but it's been whacked up.
It's a lot of money, but it goes through the states, right?
Yes. So the federal government gives the money to the states. The states turn around and they give the money to organizations in the state, local community organizations, community development financial institutions, CDFIs, or minority deposit institutions, MDIs, or community banks. Or in Philly, there's something called the Ben Franklin Technology Partnership, which makes us an economic development fund, which makes equity investments and convertible debt investments in startups and small businesses. And then there's other nonprofits that just offer, they give grants out, to help their local businesses. All the money is coming out to those organizations. So if you're
So this money could come in any form. It could be venture capital. It could be a loan. It could be a grant.
A loan, a grant, an equity investment, like a venture investment as well. And it's out there. And these organizations are getting all this money dumped on them, and they're mandated to get it out there. So, if you're listening to us talk and you're in Nebraska or Illinois or, New York or California, Google your state and SSBCI, State Small Business Credit Initiative. You will start finding out the organizations locally that's getting the money, and then reach out to those organizations and let them know that you're there and say, hey, because if you do get a loan from them, it's much easier to get the loan from them, and the rates of interest might even be better than market rates as well. But you might also get grants and equity investments too. It's $10 billion that's going out there, Lauren. So if you're a small business and you're looking for financing or aid or help or startup money, it's like a great resource.
So you mentioned that a lot of it is targeted toward minority entrepreneurs.
Not a lot. Some.
Not a lot. Some. Interesting. And the point of that is that they're trying to reach small businesses that may not have had access to financing for other reasons, underrepresented entrepreneurs who don't have a banking relationship or whatever it is. But any other business could potentially qualify. And I guess it depends on the rules of the organization that gets the money in any given state.
That is correct. And there are some organizations like community banks that give, they lend money out to local businesses like any bank. There are organizations that just invest in startups or certain industries. There's nonprofits that do give money just to, minority owned businesses, LGBT or female owned or Black or Hispanic. So, it depends. But it's there and it's available and it is out there for any small business to apply for. And, listen, you see the economy taking a little bit of a downturn in the coming months, like a lot of people talking about. You want to have capital or availability of capital. This is a good resource for doing that. So, but remember, these organizations won't know about you unless you make yourself known, and they're looking to get the money out there. So you've got to be proactive enough to reach out to these people and see what kind of deals they can do with you.
And even if you're not interested in borrowing money, there may be other ways of getting, it might be a grant that you could qualify for.
Yes.
Even if you're not interested
investment, or
even
like
if you're not interested in
debt.
taking on debt.
Right. Or if you are in the midst of trying to borrow money, say from a bank, and they're allowed to use this money as insurance or collateral to help you get a loan from a traditional bank as well. So all of that, is out there for any businesses. And you asked about it being targeted for minorities. It's a government program. And like every government program, it's all about jobs. So they want to get the money out to businesses so that businesses hire people. And that's the purpose of it. So I just want to make sure we don't misconstrue this as just a handout to a bunch of minority owned businesses. That's not the case. This is loans and equity and grants to all businesses, with the hope that they're going to grow and hire people.
Great. Next topic. The Wall Street Journal recently wrote a piece about businesses dealing with inflation by adding all kinds of fine print fees and surcharges to kind of do a surreptitious price increase, perhaps without their customers fully realizing it. You wrote a piece from your own personal experience suggesting that that's not really a great idea. Tell us about it.
My own personal experience was I was at a resort recently and They charged me a porterage fee. Porterage. And I didn't know. I was like, is this Harry Porterage? I've never heard of porterage. A porterage fee is like a fee for the people there to take your bags up to your room. The porter. Right. And it was like, I don't know, like $25 that was added onto our room fee, my room fee. I have like a carry-on bag, I don't even, I sometimes wear my underwear more than 2 days in a row, Lauren, but maybe that's more information than you need to know about.
Oh, definitely.
So I travel light. Let's just say. And, but I'm being charged the porterage fee. And listen, don't do that. If you're an organization that is trying to make up for price increases or supply chain issues, and then you advertise your customer, we're going to charge you this extra fee. It just rankles people. Build it into your pricing, for God's sake. We don't need to know about that. For the extra $25, I'm sure somebody at the hotel, some smart accountant could have done the math to say, if we charge if we bake in $25 to the room rate, then it's not going to stop people from staying at our hotel.
I'm not sure you need a smart accountant to do that, Gina.
You need a smart accountant, yeah, exactly.
No, a dumb accountant could have done that.
Just right now, like I'm down the Jersey Shore right now talking to you, and there's a number of restaurants around here on the Jersey Shore that they warn you, they threaten you that if you pay with a credit card, you're going to pay like 4% more on your bill. It's an added fee, but they are giving you the choice. So it's not like they're just saying, hey, we're going to charge you a 4%, fee regardless. They're saying, listen, you have a choice. You can pay by cash and not pay the fee, or you want to use the credit card, you're going to pay the fee. That's fine. I don't mind businesses giving options to their customers, but just, throwing on additional fees and surcharges is not good. And while we're talking about that, when I've been writing and when I've been speaking to a bunch of different groups lately and about, getting your way around inflation. And, one of the biggest parts of one big issue that everybody is the cost of logistics, and freight and delivery. It's gone up about 40% this year. Most on, domestic delivery services, domestic transport services, trucks and all of that, And I got to tell you, that's a tough one to figure out how to get around. I do see some of my clients reaching out to their customers and saying, we need to, can we share this fee? Like they ask, Like we would like to charge a surcharge. It's short term or it's only on this delivery. But as you know, freight costs have gone up significantly. So we would like to do this.
Does that work? Asking?
Believe it or not, I mean, if you have a good enough relationship with your customers, they know that it's going on. You can be transparent and say, like, this is like an unusual charge. It is what it is. We want to get you your product. It's, they're charging us $100 for freight. So, we'd like to split it 50-50. Please let us know if that's an issue. It'll be on your next invoice. And at least it's giving that person, the customer, they can say no. Most of them don't. Most of them are like, they understand and they almost appreciate being the transparent. But that gets me back to this resort with the fucking porterage fee. Sorry, you can cut that out if you want. But I had no choice.
Did you ask them about it? Did you ask the hotel?
Yes. I said, that's it. We're not using it. Oh, I'm sorry. That's just a fee that we include as part of it. I'm like, are you kidding? I know. And it's, you're trying not to be a jerk about it, but it was $25, Lauren. That's like the equivalent of like a beer at the hotel
bar. I wouldn't want to be the person behind the desk who has to explain that all day.
Yeah.
It's bad enough if you actually use the service, let alone if you're not using it.
Yeah, and I can be pretty grumpy. So anyway, I'm sure she's been replaced by a robot by now.
All right. Along those lines, next I want to talk to you about a piece you wrote about why employee ownership is growing. You offered several reasons, including that it offers owners a way to exit if they're looking for an exit. It offers big tax savings. It can improve a company's culture. There are some statistics that back that up. But it was a little surprising for me to read it, because you're like the last person I can imagine going for something like this. Not writing about it, but actually doing it with your own business. Am I wrong about that?
Isn't that funny? I would never do it. That's funny that you say that, Lauren, because I've written about it. I did a big piece on this for the Inquirer in Philly a couple months ago, and I interviewed about a dozen local business owners that have employee ownership, arrangements, and they all said it was like the best decision they ever made. And by the way, this can apply to any size business. I mean, I have 10 employees, but it can be for a 5-employee company or a 500-employee company.
Well, it is expensive, so you have to have a certain size
There's another big reason. And I do say this when I write and I talk about it. I think employee ownership the tax advantages are unbelievable, because you set it up as a separate entity. You have a bank finance your buyout of shares, and then you get a tax deduction every time your company pays the bank, and then whatever percentage that the entity bought of your company, because you have to sell your whole company, the income is tax free to that entity. It's unbelievable, and then it's a great benefit for employees. I mean, come on, Lauren, you're looking at the news this week. I mean, Google employees are angry, and Netflix employees are angry, and Tesla employees are. Oh, I'm sorry, there's no more Tesla employees. But, Amazon employees are angry. Everybody's angry. Their voice, because the narrative is that employees want to have a say. They want to have some skin in the game for the companies they work for. They want to feel connected. And that's why having an employee ownership type of, organization.
My understanding is these deals don't necessarily give employees a say.
It gives them a say. It doesn't give them control.
Well, certainly not control, but I think one of the things that appeals to entrepreneurs and business owners who go this route is that it is a way to maintain control, and you can take some money off the table while still running the business as your business. And there's a trustee, and there are rules that you have to follow, but nobody's telling you, where to open another store or when to buy another truck
unless you sell more than 51% of your company to the end, you could give up control. And a few of the people that I interviewed, they sold off 100% of their company in phases over like a 5 or 8 year period. So ultimately that control does get given up. A lot of the people I spoke to sold less than 50% of their company to this entity, which is owned by their employees. So they maintained, all control of it, but then they got a check.
I'm no expert on this, but my understanding is that it is possible to sell more than 50% and maintain control through the board. So long as you make good choices to the board, it can remain.
It is true. You can have, depending on the voting rights that you give to the entity that brought, that bought the shares. You're absolutely right. You can have the ability to remain in control. It depends on how you set up the organization.
So tell us quickly, why would you never do it?
Yeah, I was just going to get back to that. There is, there's a cultural thing that I can't get my arms around. Like, I don't want my employees telling me what to do. It's none of their freaking business. Okay, you get your paycheck, I'm running my company. I think I'm a good boss and a good owner, and you have a good life, and it's my company, not yours. Number two is that depending on how much you give up or what's stipulated in the agreement, shareholders like to see numbers, right? And I don't want to share with my employees like how much money I lose every year. It's embarrassing. So, I just, it's not my thing, it's not my culture here. But there are a lot of open-minded, smart, and more successful business owners than me that say, hey, we would like to share this because there's a lot of benefits for allowing employees to see our numbers and getting the input from our employees. And that's the kind of organization I want to run.
Well, especially at a time like this, what we've been through with the Great Resignation, if it does something to build a culture where employees feel more engaged, that's obviously a positive thing.
Think about it. Like, you're trying to attract good people to your company and like, you're like, hey, you come and join us. And after a year, you can get shares in the company, actually be an equity owner. It's a pretty cool thing. I mean, that could be the difference for hiring that good employee. And, so more power to them. So
I know your goal is to have all robots as employees.
Yes.
I guess that removes the option of employee ownership, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. So that is my goal. So thanks for making that clear.
All right. Lastly, you shared your disappointment in another piece over attempts by the new mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, to ease the city's regulations on small businesses. Tell us about that a little bit.
So the mayor issued a proclamation that they were going to have a small business forward thing in New York. First of all, doing business in New York City, I don't know, you got to be mentally ill to own a small business in New York City. It is the regulations that, exist in that city between minimum wage and vacation scheduling and.
Wait, everybody's got minimum wage laws.
Yeah, no, but there are a lot of regulations running in New York City without, you got to predict their schedules in advance. You get fined if you don't provide lactation space or if you discriminate based on a person's hair, and there's anti-harassment rules. These are all like local rules and state rules that are a lot more than in many other cities and states in this country. And then, so, the new mayor Eric Adams, he takes over and he's got, a plan where he wants to reduce regulations in the city. And they finally came out with the 118 reforms to the regulations in the city, which is fine. You can look at the list. I wrote this piece in The Hill, so I've got a link to like all the different, forms, and it's nice that it eliminated certain regulations, but it still left a lot of regulations in place. Like if you were running a business in New York, you can still get fined if you leave a window open while operating an air conditioner. You can get fined if you have a business that uses a scale, that you measure things, and if you don't put a scale between the buyer and the seller, you get fined. Or if you don't,
I don't understand. What do you mean between the buyer and the seller? It has to be observable? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I think like if you run like a deli or something and you're weighing pastrami or whatever the hell you do in a deli, you gotta have like the scale between like the deli guy and the customer.
So the customer can see if you're putting a thumb on the scale.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of it. There's, if you don't list prohibited drinks on a children's meal menu, like any beverage other than water, milk, fruit, vegetable juice or whatever, you get fined for that. If you have a dirty sidewalk, whatever that means, it just says dirty, you get fined. There's still a lot of stuff in there that you're running a business. You're like, Jesus, who's got the, the time to track? It just doesn't go far enough. And the other point that I made is that, listen, you can have, I think rules and regulations are fine. They're really for the public safety. There's always going to be some examples of being excessive. But to me, the most excessive the barriers to starting a business in New York or running a business is all the licensing rules in the state. I mean, they are just countless, Lauren. I mean, like to be a cosmetologist in New York, I don't even have any hair, but for somebody to cut my 2 hairs on my head, you have to complete a 1,000-hour course of study. You have to If you want to be a locksmith, you have to get
lot
like a
of those
letter from
rules
a local
exist
union.
because of the entrepreneurs or business owners who are established and don't want competition.
Yeah, I mean, there's that as well. You're right. I mean, and that does that make it right?
No, listen. We can all agree that there are so many ridiculous regulations that it just seems it's so common sense. We could all get together and make this easier. I just did a segment on the weekly podcast where I asked three of the owners who were there, what regulation would you eliminate if you were king for a day? And they had great suggestions, and we talked it through. There, this needs to happen. That said, I think there's a lot of I get annoyed sometimes because I think business owners focus on the numbers of regulation, which I think is misleading. It doesn't matter. It's not the number. It's the quality. Either it's good or it's bad. And I think sometimes there's too much focus on little stuff, and that just muddies the water and, removes the focus from where it should be on the truly onerous regulations that we could all agree on getting rid of. So even in your piece, there were a couple, you mentioned, the nation's highest minimum wage. I'm not sure it is the highest. I think there are some places where it's more than $15 an hour, but
there are companies paying more than $15 an hour, but I don't know if there's actual locations.
I think like there's a part of Los Angeles or in California. I think there's some jurisdictions or municipalities where it might even be higher. But let's say it's the highest. It should be highest in New York, shouldn't it?
House, you get more than $15 an hour.
Shouldn't it be highest in New York City? It's expensive to live there.
What, the minimum wage?
Yeah.
Listen, I will tell you something about minimum wage. New York City can charge whatever they want for a minimum wage. I mean, I fully support the local jurisdictions making their decisions on minimum wage. So if you're a New York voter and you voted in a city council that supports a $15 or $25 an hour minimum wage, and that's what it is, that's fine. But just know that, the higher that you make minimum wage, it will have either one or two consequences. You will shut businesses down, or they're just going to charge a lot more for their services, which will raise prices for everybody else.
There is academic evidence that you might be wrong about that, Gene. That the additional money that employees are paid actually breeds more business for existing businesses, and that when they do have to raise prices, it isn't always by a dramatic amount, especially at a time like this when everybody's raising prices anyway.
I'm going to tell you right now, I think that you and I should schedule a conversation on just minimum wage. I need a couple weeks of time to prepare so that I can lay out all of the research done that all of it contradicts each other. So for every claim that you just made about, the employees turn around and they spend in their local economies, and you're going to point to 10 studies that say that, I will point to another 10 studies that say the opposite. Except your 10 studies were financed by people that support minimum wage, and then my 10 studies were financed by people that don't support it. Do you know what I mean?
There's something to that, but I'm not sure it's all that. But let's not get hung up on minimum wage. You also mentioned the requirement to provide space for lactation.
Yeah.
Isn't that wait, you're laughing. Isn't that a legitimate need?
I don't know. I mean, if that is, I guess
you're
that's something that's legitimate.
A young mother, are you?
Yeah, I'm not a young mother, so I don't know how many young mothers are coming to work. And I guess, if that's something that needs to be there, then, that's fine. And frankly, I don't know if that was one of the things that I was really complaining.
Well, you mentioned it both in the piece you wrote and earlier in this conversation here. You also mentioned the one about discrimination based on a person's hair, which is a real concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, again, these are, should they be imposed specifically on smaller businesses? Should there be a number of employees or a size of a business where they get imposed on among all the other regulations that they have to abide by? I don't know. But I do, I do want to say though that the regulations themselves, to me, this is my feeling, okay, Lauren, is that it should be for the health and safety for the public, okay? So the proper handling of food, or, not selling cigarettes to minors, and operating a safe workplace. Now, providing lactation space, that's not doing health and safety to the public. That's like an accommodation to an employee, which is fine. Let me finish. If that's what an employer wants to do to attract employees and they do that, with, and I think that that's fine. It's the same thing with, hair. Now, if there's, if people need to wear their hair in a certain way because I don't want a big piece of hair getting into my chicken pot pie, then that is certainly a regulation that I think is for the health and safety of the public. But if it's just because to accommodate how an employee wants to look when they come into work, again, I just think that choice should be left up to the employer. I don't see what that has to do with the health and safety of the public. So that's my position.
Fair enough. Gene Marks, as always, I appreciate your taking the time. Gene is a CPA who writes weekly on small business for The Guardian, The Hill, The Philadelphia Inquirer, The Washington Times, Forbes, and Entrepreneur. You can also hear him on ABC Radio's Eye on the World with John Batchelor. Gene hosts 2 small business podcasts of his own with Paychex Corporation and with The Hartford. Thank you, Gene.
Lauren, I love arguing with you. It's so much fun.
We're going to have to do that minimum wage conversation. We'll both prepare for it.
That's exactly right. We have to prepare for it because I don't want to have a conversation. I hate it when people have conversations and they're just throwing stuff out like they think that they know it. Do you know what I mean? And it would be fun to have a conversation
the way
like
we usually do, you mean?
Yeah, but where you and I can both, and I can actually both say like, okay, well, this study by the University of Oregon said this, and then I can say, well, this study from the University of Illinois said that, and then we can argue about, debate the studies themselves, the actual data.
I love doing this with you, Gene, because you are always looking for whatever issues are topical for business owners at the moment and digging into them and actually doing research and interviewing, and it always makes this fun. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Lauren. We'll see you next week.
Have a great week, everyone.